Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Victory to Sanatana Dharma. Victory to the Dharma nation. Om Hari Om. Namaste. Welcome everyone to our latest online live stream satsanga. As I've explained a few times, actually, we consider this now to be not merely a live stream, but more than that, to be a live stream satsanga. You know, as most people I'm sure know, in the Vedic tradition, we have what are called satsanghas. That is, we have spiritual gatherings in which we do exactly what we do with these live streams now. And that is, we hear a little something from the Vedic scriptures, we hear a lecture, we have questions and answers, and then a variety of other things, meditation, etc. Of course, this being a live stream, we're somewhat limited in what we can do with this format, as opposed to being in an actual Vedic temple. But this is indeed our online satsanga. This is meant for those individuals who have been inspired by my books, etc., by my teachings, who wish to get together and talk about spirituality, be inspired, grow spiritually in every way. So again, welcome to all of you who are here today. That being said, I just want to explain to people that what we're going to be doing today is indeed something that's going to be a little bit different from what we've done in the past. I'm not going to be giving a lecture, a discourse on a Vedic scripture, Vedic verse, etc. Rather, what we're going to be doing today is indeed something quite different, very different, and it's something that is very important that has to be done, and that is I'm going to be talking about a very special, very specific project that is being organized by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. You know, for those individuals who have seen certainly many of our videos, but especially the very last one that came out, Vanquishing the Tiger of the Kali Yuga. With that video, which was the recording of a talk that I gave at our international conference that was just about 3 weeks ago or so here in Omaha, Nebraska. In that talk, I laid out a vision of how we are to thrive as Dharmis, as Vedic spiritual people within the context of our current very dark age, the Kali Yuga. If you have not had a chance to see that video yet, absolutely please see it. It is perhaps the most important talk that I have given that has been, let's say, released in video format on YouTube or anywhere else. So please, when you have a chance, watch that video. The video itself is doing extremely well. Many thousands of people are watching that video. And from what I've heard from comments are being very inspired by it. But watch that video when you have a chance. The reason why I mentioned the video is because in the video itself, I explain a small number, and it's a small number, of various projects that the International Sanatana Dharma Society is engaged in order to, in a very real way, not utopian, not pie in the sky kind of dreaming, not promises, but in a very real way, to bring about a golden age and to bring about Vedic restoration, the restoration of Dharma in this world. Again, in that video, I mentioned a few of the projects. It's a tiny representation. The truth is we have many more projects in addition to the ones that we mentioned in that video. But one of the things that I mentioned very quickly, it was almost kind of like a teaser. In fact, I believe in that previous video, I even tell people that I will be talking about this more in the future, and now is the future. The future is present. And that is something that is called the Vedic Heartland Initiative, VHI, the Vedic Heartland Initiative. And that's what I am going to be speaking about very specifically today. And to just tell you in the briefest of nutshells exactly what this is, let me explain the Vedic Heartland Initiative in this way. As I believe many people know, our main temple, our main headquarters of the International Sanatana Dharma Society is located in Omaha, Nebraska, and very specifically on the southwest side of Omaha, Nebraska. It is not an accident that we find ourselves here, of all places. You see, I'm from New York originally. That's where I lived for much of my life. I've lived in Chicago. I have lived in, visited, had access to many, let's say, vibrant urban areas throughout the nation. However, we are here in Omaha, Nebraska. And again, this is very much on purpose. In fact, I've told this in one or two videos of the past, this very interesting thing, how especially when I first arrived here, actually, and when I was the Acharya of the official Hindu temple that is here, that is a separate institution from what we have as our Vedic temple. But I remember when I first arrived here, very often people in a very quizzical sort of way would ask me, almost in these exact words. They would say, Acharyaji, why Omaha? Why Omaha, Nebraska? Why is it that we know you could have ended up going literally anywhere on earth, but yet you chose to be in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places? Because, to be honest, most people, when they hear of Omaha, Nebraska, they don't really know what to think. Many people don't really know much about Omaha. That's a good thing, actually. And interestingly, that's one of the reasons why we're here. It's certainly not the only, but it's one of the reasons why we're here. Omaha was an area that was picked very much on purpose. It is the center of the nation, not literally, but close enough. It is pretty much the center of the nation. It is in the Midwest, and indeed one of the centers of the Midwest. It is a place that is absolutely wonderful in many ways. And I'm not going to go on explaining all the ways in which Omaha is just an ideal location to have an ashram and a temple, because I could go on for a very long time. But let me just say many things that people may not know about the Omaha, Nebraska area. It is a place that is supremely affordable as far as housing, as far as buying a house, renting an apartment, as far as everything, food. Everything here is very convenient. It's a very family-friendly, very, very child-friendly area. It is a place where it is a mid-sized city where you have all the conveniences, all the art, entertainment, culture, etc., museums of any big city, but at the same time, it's small. It's a small city. Quite literally, you can go from one end of the city, driving to the other end of the city, and it would take you about 25 minutes of driving. So it's a relatively small to mid-sized city, yet it has all the conveniences of every other city. And what is also wonderful more than anything are the people of Nebraska. You know, the people of Nebraska have this reputation and always have anyway, but for myself, having been here for quite a few years now, I can tell you that it is quite true. The people of Omaha and of Nebraska in general are among the nicest, most down-to-earth, most earnest, most honorable, innocent in a good way. Not innocent meaning naive. Innocent meaning good-hearted people. These are among the most wonderful people that you will ever meet. And this is why we are here. We have been here for some time, and part of our long-term plan has always been to initiate this Vedic Heartland Initiative. And let me explain what this is in, again, a very brief nutshell, because in a short time I'm going to do something that I never do. And that is, I'm actually going to read a statement explaining in detail what this is. But what the Vedic Heartland Initiative is the idea of, indeed, now, finally, now the time is right, in 2020, beginning to form a very serious, well-functioning Vedic community here in Omaha that will serve as an inspiration and a model to the nation and the entire world of what it means to live in a healthy community that is Vedic, that is dharmically oriented. That is the Vedic Heartland Initiative, the idea that right here in the heartland of the nation of America, we are going to begin the nucleus of a Dharma community. So that is what the Vedic Heartland Initiative is. And rather than taking too much time and going very in depth, because I know myself, and I think many of my disciples know me, I can, again, easily go too deeply into this and talk about this for an hour, but as always, I want to save time for questions and answers. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, again, do something I never do, and that is I'm going to read an actual statement about what is the Vedic Heartland Initiative. So with that, if you will please bear with me, this is a very short statement, but this is about this initiative that is establishing a healthy Vedic community in the heart of America. And this will explain precisely what the vision is. The Vedic Heartland Initiative is a Vaishnava community building project initiated by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. The goal of the Vedic Heartland Initiative is to encourage sincere and dedicated students and members of the International Sanatana Dharma Society from throughout the world to consider eventually moving to Omaha, Nebraska, to this area, in order to be closer to our temple headquarters and to help form a future community of Dharmis. First in the dozens, then the hundreds, and then hopefully eventually in the thousands. Over the next several years, we want to create a vibrant, harmonious, and well-functioning Vedic community of individuals and families who are dedicated to living the lifestyle of Sanatana Dharma in an authentic and healthy way, while also actively pursuing their practical careers and goals in the material world. We envision building a community of individuals who are both successful materially as well as highly dedicated spiritually. Future Vedic community will not be a commune or a cooperative. And this part is important. This is one of many things that makes this initiative very different from ashrams in the past, etc., different attempts to create Vedic communities. The idea is not to have a number of people literally living together under the same roof. Rather, we will encourage the vast majority of our members to have independent livelihoods and living spaces, whether a house or an apartment, in the greater Southwest Omaha area, while also experiencing inspiring association with one another, having direct access to the many ISDS temple activities that will serve as the spiritual center of our community, and learning directly from the teachings of the Guru of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Each person and family will be fully independent and self-reliant, while also knowing that they are all integral members of our closely knit Vedic community. With this unique vision in mind, each follower of the International Sanatana Dharma Society who moves to Omaha as part of our Vedic Heartland Initiative should know that they are completely responsible for their own travel expenses, acquisition of employment, housing, health care, etc., but that members of our community will certainly provide as much good advice, encouragement, and spiritual fellowship as they can. We are seeking stable, self-reliant, and sincere people to participate in our Vedic Heartland Initiative. This is a project of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Thus, it is a requirement that you must be a dedicated student and member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society in good standing in order to be a part of this project. If you qualify and are serious about moving to the Omaha area to be a part of our ISDS community, we eagerly welcome your arrival. That is the statement of explanation of what is indeed the Vedic Heartland Initiative. And if you give me one moment, please. Very good. Wonderful. And again, as I said, as people know, I never just read statements. But I thought it was important because, again, I want there to be complete accuracy of understanding of exactly what is the sort of community that we wish to found here. Again, it is different in that it is not stereotypical. You know, in America, of course, we know, if anyone knows about the history of Vedic spirituality in America, there have been ashrams, there have been attempts to create communities, etc. Unfortunately, many of them have been collective in nature. That is, they've been inspired more by, let's say, more communistic sort of ideas of the 60s rather than the actual lifestyle of the rishis and how they lived in their ashrams many thousands of years ago. Again, the idea is not to have a commune. The idea is not, oh, we're going to have a big house, so we want everyone to move in with us. And, you know, things like that. No, the idea is actually the best of both worlds. That we want everyone to be indeed self-reliant, whether it's individuals or families who choose to be here. That is, we ask that everyone indeed has their own employment, that they have their own job, that they have their own place to live, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house, etc., that they are indeed self-reliant in every way. But the thing that unites everyone in this Vedic community of the future is that, certainly, even geographically, we will try to live as closely together as possible. That is, as close to this place that you see. This is our Vedic temple, and this is an orthodox and authentic Vedic temple. Anyone who has visited here can attest to that. We have beautiful murtis of Sriman Narayana on our altar, which unfortunately from your angle you can't see, but you have seen in other videos of ours. Our idea is that, again, even geographically, people will try to live as closely to the temple as possible. And that also what unites us is the fact that we know we are community. What unites us is that we are all followers and dedicated followers of Sanatana Dharma. So this is the idea of creating a truly healthy community. Not a commune, not a cult, not something in which, again, the idea is you're going to move into some house with us and be dependent upon us. No, we want you to be free. We want you to be actually independent. We want you to be, again, self-sustaining, where, you know, your lifestyle as far as being single or being married, that's your choice. That's up to you. But whichever you are, the idea is that you indeed take care of yourself. You indeed are someone who is free and independent, but at the same time, you will know that you are indeed a part of our community. And that means taking part of all of the functions that take place at the temple, having an opportunity to learn from me directly, etc. So this is the idea of the Vedic Heartland Initiative. And again, why are we doing this? It is with the idea of indeed creating an actual community, an actual functioning community, where people can come here and live in peace in, again, what is actually a wonderful area. This area of Omaha, Nebraska is actually one of the most ideal places in America to live. But it's also, again, with the idea that in addition to you benefiting from having moved here, that the community itself will serve as a model, that it will serve as an actual community-wide instantiation of the principles of Dharma. You see, it's interesting. For those of you who have watched my videos for many years, who have read my books, etc., you know that we have a truly amazing, truly immense, truly profound philosophical system. It is a philosophical system that is superior to any philosophical system upon the face of the earth, and I do not say that lightly, and I say that apologetically. We have a philosophical system that can be rivaled by none other. But it is not enough to merely have a philosophical system. We also have a culture. Sanatana Dharma is not just a philosophy. It is a civilization. And this is what we wish to create. The very nucleus of is to show people through their own eyes what an actual living Vedic civilization will look like, where all of the elements, all the civilizational elements of Sanatana Dharma are literally practiced for the world to see. That means that indeed in our community, people will have businesses. There will be yoga teachers. There will be Ayurvedic physicians. There will be people of every stripe with their own Vedic-oriented communities. Vedic-oriented businesses, etc. So in every way, we are going to indeed instantiate Sanatana Dharma in a very practical, very living sort of way, so that people can see what does it mean to have Sanatana Dharma in practice as a community, as a civilization. So with that, before I end, let me just warn people, actually, in a short time we're going to have questions and answers, but due to the importance of this topic, and again, the fact that we're doing something very differently today from what we have, I would like to tell people that when you finally do ask your questions, I am going to veer at first toward those questions that are dealing specifically with what we're talking about today. Usually in the past, I'm not very strict, and I'll just kind of look for whatever interesting questions there are. But let me tell you that when it's time for questions and answers, again, I'm at first going to look for those questions that are dealing very specifically with what I'm talking about, the Vedic Heartland Initiative. After that, those questions have been exhausted, then I will answer whatever other interesting questions are there. But I also wanted to say one last thing that is just slightly related, but also very important. And that is, you know that for many months now, since we began these live streams, I've been encouraging people to become actual tithing members of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And I just wanted to give people a very positive, very good update about that, without giving away numbers, because let me just say the numbers have been very good. The number of individuals who have taken this seriously and indeed who have been kind enough to become actual tithing members of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, it's been overwhelming. And I want to thank you. So many people have dedicated themselves to becoming actual members of the ISDS. And that has helped enormously. And indeed, this is why I keep stressing this, that we need people to become actual members. So that we know who you are, and you can also have that feeling that you are truly connected with us, with the ISDS, that you are a part truly of what we're doing and that you're helping. But also, yes, it's not a joke. We have so many projects that we are working on in order to restore Dharma to this world that we need help. And let me just tell people again, it is amazing how people have responded. So thank you for all of those of you who in the last several weeks, several days, several weeks, several months, who have become tithing members of the ISDS. I thank you enormously, very humbly and very sincerely. For those of you who haven't yet, just please go to dharmacentral.com, and if you look on the menu, you'll see an area where you can indeed become a member. And it's a very easy thing to do. The process takes maybe a minute or so. It's very, very quick. But again, thank you for those of you who have become members and are thus helping with these projects, many projects that we are engaged in. So with that, again, I'm going to end my comments for now, because I do want to give people nice, ample opportunity to ask questions. So let me signal to everyone, and I know there's a little bit of a delay, a little bit of a lag, but please feel free now to ask questions. And thank you. Namaste. Here's a very interesting question, actually. Personally, let me tell you, I tend to veer especially toward questions that are not only good, but that I've never encountered before, because it's just personally interesting to me. And this is a very good question from War Saga. Is it rude to refer to the Devas as their counterpart names? For example, calling Lord Indra, Lord Odin or Wotan, etc. That is a very good question. And again, no one's ever asked me that before. And to answer that, no, it is not rude in any way whatsoever. The reason why is because, interestingly, let's say even within the Sanskritic context, many of these devas and devis to begin with have more than one name anyway. So it's a very interesting thing. Oh, you mentioned Indra specifically. I'm not going to start giving you all the names of Indra. There are many, 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 many different names for Indra, for example, even in Sanskrit. So, that being the case, certainly it is not rude in any way to call Indra or again any of the devas or devis by other names, even if they're not Sanskrit names. So no, it's not in any way rude or offensive whatsoever. So thank you for asking that. Very good. Oh, here's another question. Namaskaram Acharyaji. Will the teaching of Sanskrit be included as part of the initiative? Thank you. Very good question. And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. You see, this is the idea of indeed community building. And in fact, just as a little bit of background, let me just say this. Many individuals who are, let's say, seemingly idealistic people will very often talk about the idea of creating one sort of community or another. I cannot tell you how many dozens, if not hundreds of times, for example, I've had people approach me, speak to me, and talk about how, oh, they have a wonderful plan about, let's say, buying 20 acres of land, having people move onto that land, and they're going to start some sort of spiritual community, and they're all going to start farming and use farming to sustain themselves, etc. And often, just to cut to the chase, I'll ask the person, oh, well, this sounds very nice. So you're a farmer? And the person always says, well, no, I've never lived on a farm. Oh, I see. Have you ever planted crops? Have you ever done anything like this? And of course, the answer is always no. And what is my point? My point is creating a community is something that's serious. It's something that takes work. It's something that takes time. It's something that takes patience. And indeed, it includes every single element of what it means to be in a community. It means culture, it means civilization. So that being the case, indeed, once we have this community seriously going and understanding how all these various civilizational elements are of extreme importance, yes, one by one by one, they will all be introduced. And one of these is certainly language. So Sanskrit, of course, is indeed the language of Sanatana Dharma. So once this community is established, then yes, eventually there will indeed be Sanskrit classes, as well as yoga classes, as well as, again, all of these various elements of Vedic civilization, of Vedic arts and sciences. These will all be introduced into our Vedic community. Very good. Here's another question about the Vedic Heartland Initiative. Acharyaji, are there any specific job skills ISDS would need in the Vedic Heartland Initiative? Yes, all of them. And again, with what I said previously, now you understand especially how I can say that. Yes, in time, we will need people with every skill set imaginable. Certainly the most important ones initially, as of right now, will be very practical ones. That is, certainly, let's say, construction skills as far as building, as far as repair, etc. Because indeed, there will be many, many opportunities for things like that. In addition, certainly any sort of IT work. So as far as the ISDS itself, we are always on the lookout for individuals who are very, very skilled as far as a wide variety of IT things. That is video editing, website development, etc. Basically anything involving the sort of IT sort of skills necessary for indeed a growing movement. So yes, those I would say initially are the two most important skill sets that we will need. That is, let's say, very practical construction, repair, etc. Anything like that, any kind of hands-on sort of skills, as well as, again, any kind of very good IT skills. So yes, anyone with those skills is especially welcome to help not just the Vedic Heartland Initiative, but indeed with the ISDS in general. We need people with such skills to help us. Very good. Politico ex nihilo. Very good. I like that. I like that name, by the way. But this is another thing that this person says. I was a tithing member a few months ago. I am hoping to contribute again soon. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate that, and the entire ISDS does. Yes, I don't know your specific circumstances, but I know that throughout the world, because of the craziness that we're going through, because of this COVID craziness and the political instability that's happening, not just in America, but during this transitional period in history that's happening throughout the world, a lot of people are having a lot of economic difficulties. Yes, just whenever you can comfortably do so. Feel free to become a member again anytime that you wish to. And thank you for your previous contributions. Very good. All right, here is another good question about the Vedic Heartland Initiative. Is this initiative strictly for followers of Vedic spirituality, or does it apply also to members of the wider Dharmic community? Very good. And I will try to answer this in a way that is understandable. Yes to both, actually. On the one hand, indeed, this is a project of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And truthfully, in fact, let me give a little bit of background. I'm someone who has studied religion, organization, movements, etc. for the better part of 45 years. And one thing that I have seen is that the idea of radical inclusiveness in creating any community leads to the death of that community. So on the one hand, yes, this is very specifically, let's say, the message, the project of the Vedic Heartland Initiative is very specifically geared toward those individuals who consider themselves to be followers of Sanatana Dharma, on the one hand. On the other hand, as long as you are an individual who is in agreement with Dharma, even generally. So let's say you're a follower of Asatru or again, a sister path, but truly a sister path, not something that is, at odds with Dharma. You are welcome to come. Absolutely. You are absolutely welcome to come. Again, all that we're asking people to do is move to Omaha. We're not asking you to, again, move on to some farm or some commune or something like that. So as long as you're an individual who, again, is following Dharma, who is a good person, a righteous person, an honorable person, a noble person, and a spiritual person in accordance with Dharma, you are more than welcome to come here to Omaha and to be a part of this initiative. Absolutely. But again, at the same time, let's say the individuals who we are especially aiming this message toward are followers of Sanatana Dharma. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. This is an interesting question. This is from Chris Kramer. And Chris, I know who you are, and I apologize for not having a chance to get back to your messages. I promise I will try to do so as soon as possible. But Chris asks, can a student create a community in their current region based on the teachings of Acharyaji with fellow students in preparation of eventually moving to Omaha? Any suggestions for forming such? Again, this is a very good question, actually. As an organization, as a movement, again, we are the International Sanatana Dharma Society. What this means is that, yes, we do indeed have branches throughout the world, and we do want to have branches throughout the world. That includes both national branches. So, for example, even now, we have a Canadian branch, we have a UK branch, we have an Australian branch, certainly an American branch, etc. These are national branches. But in addition, certainly we want to have local communities as well. And let me just say that as far as how these, let's say, official ISDS branches and communities are formed, yes, we do tend to be very strategic about this. It's not that just anyone who claims that they're a follower of mine, and I've never heard of the person in my life, it's not that they can just kind of start a branch of the ISDS locally and claim that they're affiliated with us. No, legally they can't. Actually, the ISDS is a 501c3. It's a recognized nonprofit organization. However, again, we do indeed want to have local branches. But the best way to do this is, first of all, branches should be started by an individual who, at the very least, is initiated by me. That is, someone who has taken formal vows to be my student. And thus, we certainly know who they are, and we know that they understand exactly what our teachings are, etc., that they are practicing very strictly. In other words, they have to be someone who we can vouch for, who we can say that, yes, this person, we know who they are, and we can tell people that, yes, they can trust this person as a representative of the ISDS. And then that being the case, then yes, certainly local branches can be established. Okay, I hope that answers that question. I know that's a brief answer, but yeah, that's at least a brief answer. Hmm. I'll read this question and address it. And this is from Sri Ram. Why do the coastal states in America differ from that of the Midwest? I can almost see a radical difference between New Jersey and California versus Nebraska and Iowa in terms of libertarian and conservative values. Very good. Well, that's a very good question. You're not alone. Everyone has seen this. That the coasts versus the Midwest are literally two different worlds. As far as why, as far as why the historical, social, economic conditions have brought about this radical change, this radical difference, I should say, between the coasts versus the Midwest. I don't want to go into that. I can, because I do know the history and the social factors, etc. But let's just say that it is indeed the case. The Midwest is very different. The Midwest certainly tends to be more rural. The Midwest tends to be more agricultural. The Midwest tends to be more down to earth. The Midwest tends to be more religious, more spiritual, etc. As I've said, in the Midwest of America versus the coasts, people tend to still be somewhat innocent and certainly very earnest, very honest individuals. And of course, I'm speaking in generalities. Oh, you can be anywhere and you can meet nasty people. You can be anywhere and meet wonderful people. I've known wonderful people from New York. You know, I go to New York maybe once or twice a year, and oh, there are wonderful people in New York and on the coasts. But generally speaking, yes, the Midwest, if an individual wishes to live a more, let's say, sedate, quiet, peaceful, spiritual sort of life, the Midwest is the place to be. And as we've seen, especially recently, especially with, again, everything that's going on with this whole COVID crisis and riots and political maelstroms, political storms that have been happening in America, the coasts right now, and especially very big cities, are not the place to be for the immediate future. Indeed, this is kind of as an aside, but I've been actually wanting to tell people this for many months now, if not years. If you do indeed live in America, and not all of our people do, we have people quite literally in dozens and dozens of nations, but if you do indeed live in America, now is indeed the time to start seriously thinking about leaving the largest cities if you do indeed live in one of the, let's say, largest 30 or 40 cities in America. If you live in New York, if you live in Boston, if you live in Chicago, if you live in Houston, if you live in LA, in San Francisco, if you live in certainly Seattle, Portland, Detroit, Milwaukee now, etc. If you do indeed live in any of these big cities, let me just say, now is the time to get out. If you can, now is the time to leave, because things are only going to get worse before they get better. They will get better, but I can almost guarantee that they will first get worse. So if you do indeed have the ability, if you are not radically tied down, if you do have some ability to have some mobility, come to the Midwest. And again, don't just come anywhere in the Midwest. If you're going to move to the Midwest, you might as well come here to Omaha so that you can be part of our Vedic community. But yes, things are better here. Very good. All right, this is a question not quite on the Vedic Heartland Initiative, but it's a good question that I'm going to answer anyway. That is, greetings Acharyaji, I'm a law student and I am interested in legal philosophy and want to study it in the context of Dharma and tradition. Would you happen to know any books on the subject? One thing I would certainly recommend is that you go directly to the sources, and that is a group of Vedic texts known specifically as the Dharma Shastras. And there are several of these, actually. If you go directly to these texts talk about Vedic law in truly a law context, to the point where when the British, for example, first came to India, they made sure to study these texts very strictly when they then implemented their law for the British Raj, that is for colonial India. So the British themselves, their scholars, their law scholars, studied these texts in order to, again, create law that was specific to British India. So this is what I would suggest, rather than any more recent books, and there are a few, but they're not very good at all, actually. I've read quite a few of them. Instead, go to the original sources, that is the Dharma Shastras, and I believe you'll find what you're looking for there. Here's a question. Hare Krishna Acharyaji, are you planning to have a Vedic cow care Gotirtha farm in your community? Also, how many people are anticipated to be part of the Vedic Heartland community? Very good. Well, two questions. As far as the first question, yes, in time, absolutely. Absolutely. We do indeed want to have a care facility for cows. Indeed, we want to have cows. Again, as an organization, the ISDS itself might do this, or we might indeed leave it up to just private individuals who are part of our community to just start something like this. Again, we very much believe in the idea of self-reliance. We don't believe in socialism. We don't believe in collectivism. We don't believe in communes. We don't believe in efforts like this, because they always fail. They always have failed all throughout history. Rather, again, either the ISDS as an organization might indeed eventually buy some farmland, or it might be the case that a family will decide to do this, and indeed to have some farmland and to put aside a little bit of it in order to have a gotirtha, in order to have an area for cow protection. So that is indeed one thing that we do indeed want to do eventually. And then as far as how many people are anticipated to be part of the Vedic Heartland community in America, eventually 230 million. But we'll start with a few thousand. Very good. So with that, please give me a few moments as I look at a few of these other questions. And at this point, actually, because of the time that it is now, I will be doing probably a combination of answering questions on the Vedic Heartland Initiative, as well as other questions as well. So at this point, it's kind of open. Acharyaji, do you have any insights into the pillar of fire so prevalent in the Jewish scriptures? Absolutely not. We don't follow the Jewish scriptures in any way, shape, or form. We don't follow any Abrahamic scriptures whatsoever. We don't follow the Old Testament or the Quran in any way. So I have zero comment on that. Hmm. Very good. Here's Mark Anthony again. I remember this from last time, and that is that he asked me this question, and I asked him to ask me this week and earlier, which he has done, and we still have a good amount of time. So let me read his question, and then at least somewhat briefly, I'll answer this. Namaste, Acharyaji. Could you very kindly discuss some stories of your guru and important lessons you've learned from him, and what is the best way to serve the ISDS? All right, well, those are kind of two questions, but yes, thank you for asking that, and I will answer both. Yes, there are so many stories about my guru that both I experienced, but then others as well. There are some very famous stories of other individuals who, I wasn't personally there myself, but other people experienced them. But then there are some that I experienced myself. Let me start with the latter, actually. With the former, with a story that other people tell about him very often. And one of those stories is this, that very early on in his life, when he was with his guru, and we're talking about the 1920s, the 1930s, etc., up until approximately 1936 or so. One thing that my guru was very known for was being what he himself called being a backwards pushing man. This is something he said about himself all the time. And this is what he meant by this, that when you have any kind of movement or organization or anything like this, especially when it gets to the point where it becomes somewhat large and involved and somewhat powerful, etc., it gets to the point where when the guru wants something done or is calling for some sort of leader to come to the fore, etc., of course, what tends to happen is everyone kind of rushes forward. Oh, I'll do it, Guruji. Yes, I'm the right person for the job, etc. And in the 1920s, when my guru was a young man, his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, indeed had a very large movement. And one thing that my guru was known for was that indeed he was what he called a backwards pushing man. That is, whenever there would be some sort of project that needed to be done, everyone was very vocal. All of his god brothers, all the other disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would be very vocal, and they would speak a lot and give their opinion, and we should do this, we should do that, etc. My guru, on the other hand, didn't talk a lot. Rather, he was usually the person who actually got it done. He was the person who, while everyone else was kind of sticking out their chest and, no, we should do this, and no, this seems like the most logical way of blah, 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 my guru would actually do it. And very often, by the time that his godbrothers finally came to some sort of conclusion about how their guru's order should be carried out, their guru was thanking my guru for having gotten the job done. And he did it without fanfare. He did it without seeking fame, without seeking recognition of any kind. Again, he was a backwards pushing man. He wouldn't talk and pretend that he was a leader. Rather, his modus operandi was to actually just do it very quietly and not seek any reward. This is what he was like all throughout his life. He was the sort of individual who, he was a pure bhakta. He was an individual who, it's interesting, when we hear about gurus, we have all sorts of interesting stereotypes, including the idea that, yes, the guru is someone who is always on the forefront of massive, massive things. And yes, that can or cannot be the case. But more than anything, the guru is a practitioner. More than anything, the guru is a yogi. More than anything, the guru is an individual who personally serves God, who personally serves Krishna. And that was how my guru lived. He was someone who, he led a very quiet lifestyle. He didn't tour the world. Indeed, he never left India in his life. By the time he passed away, and I believe I could be off by a year, I believe he was around 94 when he passed away, 93 or 94, he never left India. And yet, because of the magnitude and the depth and the quality of his bhakti, of his devotion, again, being a backwards pushing man, being a person who was just the personification of humility, rather than him having to tour the world searching for disciples from quite literally throughout the entire world came to him. And I was one of them. He didn't come to New York to seek me. Rather, knowing his reputation, hearing about this miraculous, amazing person who was in his 90s and was not only a god brother of Prabhupada, but someone who Prabhupada himself called my guru, Sri Dharma Swami. He called him his senior god brother. Prabhupada said this about my guru. And knowing this, yes, I went to him. I traveled to India. And again, all of his disciples ended up doing that. We went to him. As far as a personal story, this encompasses not just one experience that I had with him, but quite a few experiences where one thing that he was known for is how, first of all, he would, even in his 90s, again, when I first met him, he was maybe around 90 or so, something like that. Again, I don't remember exactly how old, but he was quite elderly. And yet he would sit and for sometimes 2 hours answer people's philosophical questions in perfect English. His primary language was Bengali, but he would answer questions, answering there in the hot Bengali summer sometimes when it would be in the 90s. And he would just sit and answer people's questions tirelessly. And it's not merely that he would answer people's questions tirelessly at his age, but his answers were so eloquent, both philosophically and even poetically. His English was not just perfect, it was 19th century English. He had a very poetic, very beautiful, very naturally poetic way of speaking. But as he would be answering these questions, one thing that he was known for that I myself witnessed several times is that as a Vaishnava Shuddha Bhakta, as a pure devotee of Krishna, he would often go into samadhi in front of us. And I witnessed this several times, where he would be speaking philosophically, answering people's questions, and then suddenly sitting like I am now, yogically. He always had very good posture. He didn't just kind of lean back. No, he sat up. Continuing to sit up yogically, he would suddenly close his eyes and just be silent and go into samadhi, sometimes for a minute, sometimes for 10 minutes. And again, trust me, he wasn't sleeping, he wasn't napping. He would be sitting upright and not moving, but he would just close his eyes and just go into a samadhi state. And then after the period was over, he would just begin to say, Gaura Haribol, Gaura Haribol, Gaura Haribol. And then he would bring himself back to normative consciousness. And as if nothing had happened, he would continue with his discourse. And let me tell you, again, I witnessed this several times. All of my godbrothers who were there witnessed this because it happened quite often. When he went into this sort of state, you could hear a pin drop. Myself, my other godbrothers, godsisters, when he would go into the state, we would just not move ourselves. We would just be like statues and just observe him. I personally would watch him breathe, and I would even see his breathing shift. Actually, I don't know if anyone else noticed this about him, but I noticed it. And again, you could hear a pin drop, and we would just wait. And we knew, not due to speculation, we could feel it. And if you haven't experienced the presence of a pure devotee, then it's hard to understand what I mean. We knew he was with Krishna right then and there. We knew that physically he was still with us, but inwardly he was in Vaikuntha. He was in Goloka Vrindavana. Inwardly, he was with Krishna. And then, due to his grace, he would eventually open his eyes and be with us again. So that was my guru, Bhakti Rakshaka Sri Dharma Swami, one of several gurus that I have. But yes, I hope that suffices. Just a few little stories about my guru. With that. Acharya, we're against communes, but what about community farms like Prabhupada envisioned to grow organic food for our people? Yes, indeed, we are against communes. Several things to be said. A, we need to understand Prabhupada in terms of time, place, and circumstance. We need to understand Prabhupada in terms of context. And sadly, this is something that so many, even seemingly sincere, some not so sincere, Prabhupada disciples have difficulty with, is that they fail to very often understand that, yes, Prabhupada served as a perfect example, and at the same time, he also was forced, as is every legitimate acharya, to often teach and do things in accordance with place, time, and circumstance. So thus, yes, it is indeed the case that knowing that he would be here for a very short period of time and wanting to very quickly establish ashrams that he hoped would serve, as we do, as models of what a Vedic community would look like. Yes, indeed, Prabhupada started initiatives that on the surface would look like communes, but then at the same time, you look at his actual writings, and his idea was not that we would have a planet of people living on a commune. No, the idea of Sanatana Dharma is that, again, we are opposed to communism, collectivism, etc. We are a civilization that very much believes in the idea of the free market, in the idea of, again, self-sufficiency of individuals and families and communities and organizations, etc., all being self-sufficient, etc. So as far as what you asked about specifically, and that is how Prabhupada community farms like Prabhupada envisioned to grow food organically for our people. Certainly that might be one option in the future for individuals and families, small groups who of their own accord and free choice decide to indeed start such cooperatives. That certainly is one alternative, but again, it's not the primary one. It is indeed an alternative. But yes, that economically speaking, agriculturally speaking, that would not be the mainstay economically of any sort of Vedic community. That's more akin to a factory farm, if anything. What Prabhupada actually envisioned as far as agricultural life is that you would have multiple private families, and they would each have their own farm. And then, again, as far as free will cooperation between a certain number of those farms, however big or small, that's up to them. But the economic basis of any form of agricultural community would be the family. The family always. That is how it has always been throughout the history of Vedic civilization. That is how it will be in the future. So I hope that answers that question. Very good. I am looking at the time, and sadly, we only have about 2 more minutes. This is not a question. It's a very short comment. So because we only have now 1 minute, I am going to just read this. This is from War Saga again. Cities are a cesspool of degeneracy. Oh, we agree. We absolutely agree. And trust me, for those of you who disagree, you're disagreeing with the wrong person. I was born and raised in New York City. I know what cities are, and I know what cesspools are. And New York City, when I was growing up back in the 70s in New York City, was 100 times better than what it is now. Now it is indeed definitely a cesspool under the current mayor and with everything that's happening there and crime going through the roof, etc. But indeed, I agree, cities are cesspools of degeneracy. And that is indeed why we need alternatives. And that's why we are creating an alternative, but an alternative that actually is going to be successful and actually is going to work for many reasons that unfortunately I don't have time to go into. This is real, this Vedic Heartland Initiative. This is not some pipe dream. This is not some utopian sort of thing. Rather, this is something that's going to be a viable and truly well-functioning spiritual community in reality and in actuality. We are indeed going to create this with your help. Again, we can only create this with people. A community exists for the sake of its people. And how these people are going to come about is any of you who, again, are in a position to do so. please consider moving here to the Omaha area and being part of our new Vedic heartland. With that, I thank you for being here with us today. Just again, I need to wrap up as always by just making these few statements. Please subscribe to this Dharma Nation channel if you have not done so already. This is the most important spiritual channel on YouTube, bar none. Those of you who have been with us for some time, you know I'm not exaggerating. We present truly authentic, traditional, orthodox Vedic spirituality like no other channel, like no other guru, like no other organization or movement in existence does. So please subscribe, and you will see many, many more videos like this and better. Please go to dharmacentral.com when you have a chance. And when you're there, look at our books. Our books are, again, like no other books that exist on Vedic spirituality. Please consider getting some of those. Please join our email list that you'll see on dharmacentral.com. And again, please consider becoming a tithing member. Become an actual member of this movement, of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. You know, I'll be honest with you. You do not have to become a member of the ISDS to have liberation or to make spiritual progress, etc. That's not the point. You know, you don't have to be officially affiliated with us. God is God, and if you are sincere and if you follow in an authentic way, you will make spiritual progress, regardless. But again, we have something important that we're doing. We are attempting to change the world for the better. We want to restore Dharma in this world, and these are not just words. We truly aim to do this, and we can only do this with your help. So please consider becoming an actual tithing member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Just go again to dharmacentral.com. Look on the menu. You'll see an area on the menu that talks about membership. So please take a look at that. With that, I'm going to end here. Thank you again for being here with us. Please be here with us again next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time, because we are again in Omaha, Nebraska, the Vedic Heartland. And with that, I thank you for being part of our live stream online satsanga. Until next Monday, please take very good care of yourselves in every way. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Vedic Heartland Jayate. And with that, namaste. Until next time.